Welcome back. How you doing? I hope you're doing well. This week on Fitness Advice You're Not Gonna Take Anyways, we're talking calories, macros, and more. And we finally have our co-host with us.
Hello.
Do you want to go by V or Victor?
V.
V. This is V. I'm so happy he chose that. V's actually been with me for many years. He helped create our website that you see and post many of the blogs that you see on there. He is a journalist, so he's going to be here to help us with lots of fun questions and hopefully answer a few things as well. He's been working out for
7 years?
That's a pretty good amount of time.
Yeah.
We've worked together a little bit in that amount of time and some fitness stuff, not just in our answering your guys' questions on the podcast. So, before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell so that you don't miss an episode. Okay, calories, macros, and more. This is a huge subject that I speak to with a lot of clients, prospects, and even followers and family members. Why? It's a little bit complicated, or are you just making it complicated? So we're gonna start with some basics. One of the most basic things you need to understand is what is a calorie. Do you know what a calorie is?
On the surface level, yes. It's the unit of energy you get from food.
Yes.
That's about it.
So it is a form of energy, but it is also heat rising 1 degree. So it's creating temperature inside of your body, which creates fuel for the mitochondria inside of your cells for ATP. How fun is that?
Super fun.
Right? Now, I'm sure you're asking, what are macros?
What are macros?
You know what macros are?
No.
Literally?
Not a single understanding.
Macros are protein, carbs, and fat. The big three. The big three that really assist with recovery, growth, and bodily functions on a daily. All three are actually really, really important. A lot of people cut theirs out. Have you ever done a diet where you cut something out?
Yes.
What did you cut out?
I cut out dairy, so some of the protein from that, and pretty much anything that most people, the layman, would consider a carb. Noodles, bread, things like that.
So I think that that's still a great thing. However, most of the time I say definitely cut out the dairy and replace it with like vegan cheese, oat milk, soy milk even, right? Soy's still good for men in small quantities. So that's good, especially because in this country, dairy is pasteurized, and that means that there's a lot of sugar in it, and milk sugar as well, which turns a lot of people diabetic. They don't even realize it. So even though milk can be really high in protein and really high in some vitamins like vitamin D, it's actually processing in your body in a really harmful, inflammatory way. As far as like bread and stuff goes, I always tell people, like, don't necessarily cut out your carbs. Carbs are good. Carbs are a source of fuel. You've got to either have fat or carbs to fuel the muscle. It needs glycogen, right? And glycogen replenish so that the muscle can recover. Without this, we actually start to fatigue. If your body is not used to a certain fuel source, it takes at least 4 weeks for it to get used to that. That's why when people go on like keto or something, they get really constipated. Their body's not used to just protein and fat all the time, right? So by taking out the carbs, you take away that fuel source, and you actually take a lot of what the brain needs as well for a fuel source. And doing things like watching what the actual ingredient is, making sure that they're whole wheat and they have all of the wheat germ in there, because that's where you're going to get your vitamin E and other vitamins for your immune system as well as your skin, right? I know you need good skin if you're on TV, so. But those are the big three, and those are the ones that we want to try to just keep in moderation for the most part. Macros, if you guys don't know what macros are, when a trainer or a nutritionist is referring to macros, there's macros and micros, we're talking about your micronutrients such as your vitamins and your trace minerals, right? So these are going to come from your foods. For instance, if you're feeling a little lethargic and you're not metabolizing right, your energy's low, your lips are chapped, your B vitamins are most likely what's the culprit of being low. Having some berries is going to give you back electrolytes. It's also going to give you back those B vitamins as well to make you have a little more pep in your step throughout the day. You want to add a little bit of salt to that, believe it or not. Have you ever had fruit with salt on it?
Yes.
It's really
I
good.
really like it.
It's really good. We have some orange watermelon right now, and you add a little bit of lime on there, and then put some, I have this red Algaean, something like that, kind of salt from Hawaii. oh my gosh, man, it's like you bite in there and it's like, flavor. So micronutrients are really, really important. They are what fuel our cells and our systems, such as the immune system and the digestive system. Without those nutrients, our processes inside of us are going to stall, fail, and our body's going to break down.
Now, why is it important, especially to get those maybe from food as opposed to eating whatever you want and popping a multivitamin?
That's a great question, B. I love this question. So supplements are literally there to supplement what's missing in the diet, right? The gaps that you can't fill. Let's say you live in middle America in the middle of just fields and fields and fields of wheat, and it's really tough to get certain foods out there because you're in the middle of nowhere. A supplement would be good in this case. Eating whatever you want and then taking a supplement, you're losing at least 50% of what's in that supplement, and you're literally just gonna piss it down the toilet. It's gonna exit the body instead of be absorbed. We still need certain kind of fiber, and we still need certain nutrients in order to actually absorb those supplements to their fullest. You also wanna make sure that the supplement you're taking actually dissolves in water. And a really good test of that, especially with tablets, is to just take it and drop it in water. And if overnight it's not dissolved, it's probably not good for your system.
Interesting. So things like vitamin C powder is a good example of one that will actually be absorbed, it will dissolve, whereas the really hard tablets of multivitamin that don't chew, they don't dissolve, that's probably not good.
Yes.
Okay.
A really good example of that is like those emergencies versus, I know of a really good tablet. If you are anemic, it's called Hemoplex from Nature's Way, and they use a plant-based tablet so that when you do drop it in, it doesn't have all of that silicon dioxide and stuff in it, and it will actually dissolve, and most of it does. I would say, I think I remember about 75% of that pill dissolving when I put it in water many, many years ago. So that's a good one. Other ones like the Spectrum Health multivitamins that you can get from like Walmart,
Yeah.
those will not dissolve all the way in water. They barely dissolve at all, which means that you're probably just pooping them out.
Fun.
Right? So literally flushing your money down the toilet because your body's not absorbing.
Okay.
Which nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants it. Intake. How to find your intake.
Simple reading and math, right?
No.
No, wrong.
Wrong. There are plenty of websites that will give you a simple math, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to math it right either.
That is how math works.
I suggest going to active.com, and they're actually really, really accurate. They use roughly the same one that I do, which is to take the body weight and then times it by 10, and then times it by 1.1 through 9, which is your activity level.
Okay.
Mine comes out to be roughly about 3,000 calories per day. When you put it into active.com, it's going to give you what your baseline is. So if I go into my FitnessPal, you'll see that it says 2770. This is my baseline. Any days that I exercise and I put that exercise in there, you'll see those calories increase and go up. And now people are unaware of this portion because they go, oh no, I have to stay within that 2,700 calories, right? That's not true. Did you work out today? Were you active today? How much water did you drink? The calories are burning off. Your body is going to need more fuel because you're burning fuel, just like your car. So that's a really good way. I think the most simple way is to just go to a website that is reputable and has a really good formula. There's also some really good online trainers like Hattie Boydell, who has a great nutritional program as well, and when you sign up for it, you can also put in your stats there and it will give you your baseline, and you can just go from there. So it's probably the most simple way outside of using a particular mathematical equation yourself,
Right.
because there are about 2 or 3 different ones and none of them are like super accurate.
Just like you mentioned, keeping track of the baseline versus what you may need if you are being more active and burning more and requiring more fuel. Baseline as far as individual people, your readout might be different for
Yes.
you as opposed to what the software predicts, so it's important to pay attention to
Yep.
you.
Yes, and this has happened to even a few of my clients where they text me and they go, so I've already hit my calories for the day, but I'm still like really hungry. then you need to eat. It's okay to intuitively eat as well as follow a plan. So there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, I've eaten 90% of my plan today, I'm gonna go have some fucking pizza. Cool, right? That's okay. You've already eaten clean for the majority of the day. Go enjoy yourself with something that you like. The body will handle that. The more that you put into it like that in moderation, it will learn how to work with or fight against it. So that's a really good point too. Eat more. It's fuel. Your body wants it. If it wants it, it wants it. I'm not saying everybody needs McDonald's.
Aww, but hash browns. No,
Ooh.
listen to what she says.
I'll make some hash browns that are homemade and good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, virtually anything, yes, we all get it. There are times when you need to go and grab something, time constraints, budget constraints, whatever, what have you. It is almost always going to be cheaper and healthier to make whatever you like at home.
Absolutely, that's actually a really, really good point, especially one that a lot of my clients, my nutritional clients, will struggle with right in the beginning. They also want to jump in the deep end. You don't have to jump in the deep end and just go balls to the wall on your program. Start small. Exchange snacks every day. Exchange one meal for one that you've made at home and brought with you. You know, make dinner at home every single night. Things like that. Make sure that you're starting small. When you restrict yourself too much and too quickly, yourself is going to rebel against that. And it's going to push back, and then you're going to go, why am I not hitting my goals, right? Well, because you're releasing stress and anxiety and all this to your plan, saying, oh, I have to hit it, I have to hit it, I have to hit it. But in reality, you're regressing because you're not calm and just going with the flow. So the best thing you can do is intuitive eating while following a plan.
Which is also an interesting point. You know, obviously we're talking about measuring what's going in, calories, macros, micros, but if you are producing a lot of stress in your life, your body is going to respond to that as a sort of trauma response. You're going to store fat.
Yes, and to that regard, you want to make sure that you're giving your body movement or giving it that trauma, that stress, that anxiety, whatever you're feeling, an outlet. And one of the best ways to do that is either cry, and I know we have a huge issue with that in America, male and female, or work out. Do some exercises, man. There's nothing wrong with that. Do some jumping jacks. I tell my clients all the time, you feel a little antsy or you're starting to feel a little lethargic in the middle of the day, get that like afternoon lull, do two things. Move and eat. Eat some food. It's gonna fuel you. Your brain feels fatigued because your job has forced you to sit in front of a screen for 8 hours and it's going, I need a break. When you're done with your 60-minute workout, how do you feel? Like you're hungry and need a break, right? It's the same thing. We wanna make sure that we're staying fueled all day long. All day long. Give yourself an outlet for that stress and anxiety to go somewhere else and not into your food or your body. You want it to leave your body.
It's okay to cry. You can cry through your eyes or through your pores.
This is true.
Both count.
Currently crying through my pores right now on my back. Another question I get a lot is, how do I grow muscle? How do I lean bulk? You have asked me this before, actually. And my answer was, you remember?
You are not a speaker system. You can't ask me about definition. Something akin to that.
This was many years ago. It was that if you're gonna grow, you have to eat. If you're gonna lean bulk, you have to up your intensity of your exercises, right? So it's still a caloric intake versus output method, right? We still wanna be, if we're growing muscle, we still wanna be eating enough, putting in, but we still wanna be putting out enough force and intensity in our workouts for those power movements that will engage all of the muscle fiber, make it active, break it down, tear it apart so you can go eat some more food, and then there it goes, building up stronger again.
Going back to the car metaphor, if you want to do more, you have to put in more fuel, but you have to then use that fuel.
Yes, you have to use the fuel that you've already got before you put in more fuel, which is why a lot of people end up in a surplus of calories. They're not putting the right amount of fuel at the beginning of the day, utilizing that fuel and then refilling. So we want to keep that. And in that regard of the car analogy, it's the same thing as upgrading your car, right? Maybe you upgrade your food, suddenly you eat better food, you eat slightly larger portions, right? You no longer go out, things like this. When you're lean bulking, you're gonna moderate your carbs a lot more. For many people, as many people in this country have a really low carb tolerance, which is why we have so many diabetics. If you're someone like me who has a high carb tolerance, you actually need more carbs in order to stay lean. I still consume a good 250 grams of carbs per day, and I sit around 15% body fat, which is very low for a female. I have had other clients who cannot do carbs because their carb tolerance is too low and it accumulates too much inflammation and water holding for them, versus their body actually utilizing that as their fuel source. So you have to find that balance between having mostly protein, vegetables, and fruits for lean bulking, into finding moderation of carbs to have just muscle growing at a normal pace. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Cool. So another really good thing to do while you're going through your meal plan and planning things out is something that I like doing, which is eating with the seasons. Do you eat with the seasons, Pete?
I get a pumpkin spice latte in fall.
Not quite what I mean, but good start. So what I mean is in the summertime, berries are a lot more prevalent, and so is citrus. In the fall time, you're getting more melons, apples, things of the sort, right? Eating with the seasons also helps your body to adjust with that season as well, much like eating local honey for allergies, right? Eventually your body's gonna adapt and shift. So it makes it a lot easier. Towards the winter time, I tend to have even denser types of carbs. I bring my good potatoes back, like the Yukon Golds, the red potatoes. Never, never, never eat brown russet potatoes. You know why?
Why is that?
When they hit your tongue and mix with your saliva, they immediately change into sugar, which is why we love them so much. So our bodies, because our tongue is the exact shape of the sugar molecule on our taste buds, that's why when sugar hits our tongue, we're like, I gotta have more of this, right? Immediately our frontal lobe is like, yes.
And eating with the seasons will actually also kind of help your budget and your bottom line.
It really
For
will.
example, I do actually kind of eat with the seasons. Cherries, good source of vitamin C and other things. They're usually more readily available and cheaper in the summer. If you're asking your grocery store where the cherries in the dead of winter, if they have them at all, you're probably going to pay a time and a half for them.
Yes, especially cherries. And cherries are also really good for inflammation and fighting off free radicals, and antioxidants with the cells. So after you're done working out, my biggest suggestion to clients is have a berry smoothie with cherries in it, because the cherries, the ginger, the berries, and then your protein, you've got carbs, anti-inflammatories, and antioxidants in there, along with recovery and fuel, which is great. So that's a really good way to eat with the seasons as well. If you really, really want your food outside of that season, buy it frozen. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not quite as nutritious. You want to make sure that it comes from a good source and that it's actually being flash frozen. The reason being is when you freeze a berry and you just let it freeze on its own versus flash freezing it, it loses its flavor and it loses some of its nutrient content. We don't want this to happen. Don't put water in your smoothies either. I have to tell people this way too often. No water, no ice. There are many, many vitamins and micronutrients that go into a well put together, thought out smoothie that are actually hydrophobic, meaning that they are not going to bind together and then travel around the body and be absorbed where they need to be.
That's really interesting. Because I know that a lot of people use water and or ice in their smoothie as a substitute for juice or milk.
Right.
They think, okay, I'm cutting out a sugar. You're actually
Or
damaging
calories.
the product.
Yeah. and you're actually damaging the product. Not only are you cutting yourself out some fuel, but you're cutting out a lot of nutrients, and you're essentially watering down your food, which is not a good thing. So we want to keep all of that in there. And you're right about saving budget with eating with the seasons, because things tend to be a lot more affordable. I don't want to use the word cheaper.
No.
We shouldn't use cheap. It's affordable to us, right? Affordable means that you have the money comfortably and safely to be doing this. And I'm telling you that once your body adjusts to eating whole foods that aren't processed, it actually is cheaper. It really is. You also have to remember that the more muscle that you house, the more fuel you're going to burn, which is why I can get all the way up to a 4,000 calorie day and still be fine. Someone else gets up someone else gets up there and they're starting to feel maybe a little pudgy, they've got eaten too much, right? The more muscle you house, the more energy you're gonna burn throughout the day. You're also gonna help regulate your mood through food, which is really great because of those micronutrients and the vitamins that are in there, along with just fueling your body. So it doesn't eat itself. Because it will.
Terrifying sentiment.
Yes.
But yeah, it's true.
That is what starvation is the body tapping into itself, and it will start with the muscle most of the time versus your fat.
But when it does get down to the fat, you also have another problem. A lot of the body's toxins that are not flushed out are stored in fat.
Are stored in the
So
fat.
if yes, you want to work out, you want to burn fat, you want this, you want that. If you put yourself in a situation of starvation to try to burn off whatever part of your body you don't want, you may also be dumping a lot of toxins back into the system, which is going to set you back.
Well, it can make you septic, it can give you some metabolic illnesses, it can give you some just illnesses in general that you don't want to deal with. Also, you don't have to be a larger person, obese or overweight, to accumulate diabetes. I have a former friend who is 160 something pounds at your height. He's a very slender man, and he wears his little thing on his back for his insulin pump because he developed diabetes from not eating enough food. You develop diabetes from not eating enough food because it's the same concept that when your body finally gets that food, it goes, oh my God, we're never getting this again. And it breaks it down, turns it into glucose, but it stores it rather than utilizing it. And so now you have all this excess sugar inside of you, and your pancreas isn't creating insulin the way that it's supposed to anymore because everything, including your hormones, has gotten jacked up now.
Which, not to get too far off topic, another important thing, if you are someone that grew up with food scarcity or a very tight budget, that is something else you need to be aware of. You need to work on, it takes time, it might be stressful, but you need to take the time to work on not continuing eating and consuming and buying and storing in a food scarcity pattern. Because in addition to being super stressful, you may also just end up damaging yourself because of how you are choosing to consume. Yes,
binge eating can also be just as damaging. As somebody who is an eating disordered recovery person, I've been an anorexic, 119 pounds, but I've also been very overweight with a 43-inch waist at 215 pounds. And neither one was very healthy for me. And one began because somebody told me I wasn't pretty enough to be a model, and also because at one point in my childhood, we were a little food scarce. My parents went through a little bit of money issues, just like we all did when we were kids, right, in the 90s and early aughts. But there's also that other point of like, you don't want to overdo it because you can create the exact same metabolic diseases and issues as you can if you're not eating. So you got to find the good balance and moderation of that.
It really is about the balance, because if you tip too much to one side, it's not good.
And it's all about mindset too. It's something that I work very heavily on with quite a few of my clients who are also ED recovered individuals, and many of them have dealt with anorexia, but there have been a few who deal with binge eating as well. And so that scarcity food mindset actually goes both ways. Sometimes you go, okay, I don't have a whole lot of food, I'm just not gonna eat, I'm gonna keep myself busy over here. And then when you do that, your stress level starts to rise suddenly, and you're like, I don't know why I'm anxious, but I'm sitting here shaking my leg, and I don't know what's going on, right? But on the other side, you can also go over here and binge eat and just be like, oh, I feel terrible, I'm stressed, nothing's working, everything's awful, and now I'm feeling gross about myself. You have to have that right mindset and tell yourself that it's all gonna be okay and that everything happens for a reason. Nothing is ever permanent either. That was a huge lesson my parents taught me when I was younger. Nothing's ever permanent. So, I think that's everything that we have.
Random thing, actually, I don't think that this is in the notes, but I've heard you use the phrase before, empty calories versus calories that are good or useful or you need versus empty and throwaway. Do you want to get into that?
So empty calories are things like fast food, alcohol, and what we mean by that is that food has calories to it, but there's no nutritional density there. There's no nutritional value. That means that your body's still gonna get some kind of fuel, but it's the wrong kind of fuel. And so all it's gonna do is just break down the engine, gunk it up, and make your pistons not work anymore, basically, right? Those pistons aren't gonna be firing anymore on all 6 cylinders. You might suddenly only have 3, right? I know, you didn't expect me to pull out car jargon, did you?
Not again, not to such detailed extent.
So we wanna make sure that we're eating foods with the right fats, so the right oil, lubricant for those pistons, right? You wanna make sure that you have the right kind of antifreeze in the wintertime, right? You wanna make sure that the tires are good. You wanna make sure that your tune-up is good, that your spark plugs are running right, all kinds of stuff. So the engine is what's most important here, and then the body comes last. That's very important.
It has to run correctly to look good.
Yes, and it's okay to always put in a higher octane. They say that actually will help keep your engine clean. So much like in a car, the better the food, the better you run, right? The better you're gonna feel. All right, warriors, I hope you have a much better understanding of how to create a little bit of a nutrition plan for yourself, or at least eat a little better over the years to come. Before we end, I'm gonna hand over the screen to V, and he's gonna tell you a little bit more about himself as our new co-host. Here you go.
So I first ran into Kaie at a gym in the Austin area, and we have been Goals Gym. And we have been friends pretty much ever since. Done photography work, online work, a lot of stuff with the blog and with these videos. And as far as, obviously, there's a bit of a difference here. We have someone who is obviously in pretty much peak physical form, Wonder Woman, if you're recasting, and me. So my fitness journey has been a little up and down. I haven't really faced some of the difficulties and challenges that you have as far as your health and a lot of the things that you've persevered through, but I have, like I said, had a lot of up and downs. When I was much younger, I got up to about 250 pounds through some of the dietary modifications that we talked about and working out. I got down to about 170. For someone who's 6'3", that's a little low. Trying to balance out, talking a little bit with Kaie, but not necessarily, in keeping with the podcast title, fitness advice that I didn't quite take all the way. I did try to measure it up and get closer to about 180 to 200. I think that's a pretty comfortable range for someone who's 6'3". Sitting in a chair or a car for work for 3 years, I'm actually sitting around 230 something, so I will be taking the fitness advice, and I advise that you do as well, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, please like and subscribe. Please go check out the videos that she has put up prior, and we will have a lot more awesome content for you to hopefully take and not ignore.
All right, guys, if you have any other questions, topics you'd like us to cover, drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to share this with your friends and follow us on Instagram. We'll see you next time.